Our story begins in the sun-baked beauty of Jeonju, where our protagonist, Yu-Jeong, embarks on a 4-hour trek from Seoul. This isn't a scenic getaway, but a mission for a summer course assignment on storytelling and culture. Feeling famished and drained, she stumbles down the village streets, colliding with an unexpected obstacle. As she raises her gaze to voice her frustration, she finds herself looking into the eyes of an incredibly handsome stranger. Initially, she's at a loss for words when he starts apologizing, but the moment he places the blame on her, she's ready to let him have it. However, before she can deliver her retort, a reporter interrupts them mid-interview. The reporter is questioning the handsome stranger, now known as Mr. Lee, about his café, Delicious Blood. The name alone sends shivers down Yu-Jeong's spine. Who in their right mind names a café Delicious Blood? Intrigued, she quickly Googles the place, discovers it's nearby, and decides to check it out. Arriving at Delicious Blood, she takes a moment to brace herself before stepping inside. True to its name, customers are enjoying their drinks from blood bags and drip stands. Despite her initial revulsion, she orders a banana milk and a scone, which sets her back $20. As she settles down with her meal, she takes in the unique and visually striking decor of the place. A few snaps for her report wouldn't hurt, right? As she starts clicking away, ensuring no one else is captured in her shots, she notices Mr. Lee in her viewfinder. Realizing he's the owner of this bizarre establishment, she's taken aback. Something shifts inside her as they lock eyes. His gaze seems to penetrate her very soul, causing her heart to race. Flustered, she decides to wrap up her photo session and head home. But before she can make her exit, a lady from the cafe confronts her, insisting she delete any photos that might have inadvertently captured her. Yu-Jeong tries to reassure her that she's careful about not including others in her shots, but the woman is relentless, even demanding that Yu-Jeong hand over her camera. Just as Yu-Jeong is about to assert her innocence, the cafe lady and her sidekick launch into a tirade of insults. That's Yu-Jeong's cue to exit stage left. She didn't sign up for a verbal beatdown. But before she can make her escape, the fiery lady latches onto her arm and yanks her back. This sends our heroine stumbling into a massive painting on the wall, creating a Picasso-esque mess on the floor. In the ensuing chaos, Yu-Jeong crumbles to the ground, tears streaming down her face. It's like life decided to drop a giant anvil on her head all in the space of a few seconds. As she wallows in despair, a hand reaches out. Blinking through tear-streaked eyes, she sees Mr. Lee, the cafe owner, offering assistance. Is this a plot twist or just another plot hole in her life? With one swift move, Lee helps her to her feet. He orders the lady to step back, pointing at the expensive wreckage on the floor. Yu-Jeong feels a pang of dread. She'll have to drop her summer class and take on a job if she's asked to foot the bill. As she stands there weighing her options, Lee walks over to the troublesome duo and calmly asks them to apologize to Yu-Jeong. To her shock, they comply without a fuss. But wait, there's more. Lee instructs them to clean up the mess they've indirectly caused. Again, they obey without complaint. At this point, Yu-Jeong's mind is spinning. The customer is always right, right? Not in this cafe, it seems. Before she can fully process the situation, Lee turns to her, wanting to discuss the damaged painting and its cost. She's taken aback. Why should she alone bear the burden? What about the other two troublemakers? Lee assures her he'll deal with them later. For now, she's his primary concern. With a heavy heart, Yu-Jeong follows him to his office. In the office, she waits anxiously as Lee scribbles on a piece of paper. When he hands it over, explaining it's an invoice for the painting, she gulps. The amount on the paper nearly knocks the wind out of her $100,000. She quickly launches into a flurry of reasons why she can't pay. But for every obstacle she presents, Lee has a solution. His proposition? She can work off her debt at his cafe. Yu-Jeong's blood runs cold. As fear grips her, one thought looms large: this is going to be one hell of a ride. How did her day take such a wild swerve? She's been offered a job by this guy who seems like he might be more trouble than he's worth. Is she cut out for it? Not sure. Then Mr. Lee, asks if she has any other solutions up her sleeve. His casual demeanor irks her. He's acting like they're old pals, which they most definitely aren't. But then he drops another bombshell: he doesn't know her, but he'd like to. Say what now? It feels like things are moving at warp speed. And Lee isn't giving her a moment to catch her breath. He gets up, lays down his offer one last time, and warns her that if she doesn't take it, they'll have to slug it out in court. Facing a legal battle is the last thing she needs right now. So, with a gulp of trepidation, she agrees to work for him. As she stands there, a cocktail of fear and worry brewing inside her, she watches Lee, her new boss. His expression isn't exactly welcoming. Did she say something wrong? Lee pulls out a paper from his desk and hands it over. It's a contract outlining how things roll in his cafe, and he makes sure to mention how well his employees get paid. Intrigued, Yu-Jeong scans the document. The pay is surprisingly good, but there's a catch: the cafe is 4 hours away from her home in Seoul. The commute alone would be a nightmare. Lee offers her a place to stay, his office. Before she can protest how absurd it sounds, he shows her around the comfy space. It's not half bad, but why is he being so nice? And why does he treat her like a kid? She can't help but ask him how old he is. His answer leaves her flabbergasted: 230 years. Trying to process this whirlwind of a day, she tells Lee she needs to head back to Seoul to get her stuff. He's skeptical about her returning, suspecting she might take off. After all, $100,000 is no small sum. So, she suggests he accompany her to ensure she doesn't flee. And surprisingly, he agrees. Strapped into the passenger seat, Yu-Jeong squirms in the awkward silence. If she knew he'd actually come along, she would have kept her mouth shut. The idea of sharing a 4-hour ride with him is making her anxious. She pleads with him to let her go alone, promising she'll return promptly. But Lee reassures her that she won't have to pay for gas, it'll be covered by the cafe. But that's not why she's uneasy, it's because she's not comfortable around him yet. On the road, they get stuck in traffic, and that familiar pang of regret creeps up again as she considers the stressful ordeal he's going through to drive her home. But Lee doesn't seem to mind. He seems pretty chill about it all, urging her to relax. Plus, he was planning on hiring a new staff member anyway. Despite his reassurances, Yu-Jeong can't shake off her confusion. Why would any boss go above and beyond for a part-time employee? This question keeps her busy until they reach Seoul. Once there, she hops out of the car, telling Lee not to move an inch, because she'll be gone for about an hour. She needs to send some photos to her group mates and email her summer course professor. Lee warns her to return at the agreed time or else he'd have to come and fetch her. Seriously? What more sass does this guy have hidden? Annoyed but resigned, Yu-Jeong agrees to his odd demand and leaves him in the car to run her errands. Thankfully, her roommate Jae-hee is away for summer break, so at least she won't have to explain why she's being whisked away by a good-looking nutcase. With the clock ticking, Yu-Jeong scrambles to finish her tasks before rushing back to the car. There, she finds Lee asleep in the front seat. She has to admit, he's quite a sight. As she takes a moment to admire him, she gets lost in her thoughts. So much so that when he suddenly wakes up, she jumps out of her skin. Lee pulls her back into the car, leaving her speechless. It almost feels like they've known each other for years. Then, things take a strange turn. Lee starts mumbling about how good she smells, and then asks if he can kiss her. Stunned, Yu-Jeong confronts him about his absurd request. Unfazed, he repeats himself with the same calm demeanor. At this point, Yu-Jeong is convinced he's lost his marbles and wonders if she should call the police. However, she keeps her thoughts to herself and firmly declines his request. With her anxiety growing, Yu-Jeong begins plotting her escape. If she's this scared of being alone in a car with him, how will she manage to work under him for months? As she mulls over her options, Lee apologizes for his inappropriate behavior, blaming it on the way she was staring at him and her intoxicating scent. It doesn't make sense, but Yu-Jeong lets it slide. Later, they stop by a mini-mart to grab some food and snacks. While Yu-Jeong orders her meal, Lee excuses himself, claiming he's already eaten. Left alone, Yu-Jeong enjoys her meal and buys a can of soda for Lee as a small token of appreciation for paying for her food. But just as she's leaving, she's cornered by a group of intimidating men. And from the looks of it, things are about to get rough. Yu-Jeong tries to bluff her way out, telling the burly dude who seems to be running the show that she's not alone. But her warning has zero effect on him. He brushes off her bluff with a sinister grin, leaving Yu-Jeong feeling trapped. She knows Lee isn't rushing back to play her knight in shining armor. Just as she's bracing for a showdown, the leader of the pack makes a grab for her. But our girl's no damsel in distress, she bats his hand away, warning them she won't hesitate to call the cops if they lay another finger on her. Just when she thinks she's about to have a full-on panic attack, look who decides to show up, Lee. He strides in like he owns the place and orders the men to back off, claiming she's with him. With an arm around her, he commands the goons to apologize. But they just laugh it off, brushing him aside. Yu-Jeong pleads with Lee to drop it and leave, but he's having none of it. In a flash, he hoists the leader of the pack by his collar, tossing him into his buddies like a ragdoll. When Lee repeats his demand for an apology, the danger in his voice is clear as crystal, and this time, they don't dare argue. They start apologizing profusely, tripping over their words in their haste. Their leader rises, dusting himself off as if preparing for round two, but at Lee's command, he drops to the ground, begging for mercy. It strikes Yu-Jeong as odd, it's like they're under some kind of spell. But she shrugs it off, happy to get out of the sticky situation. She grabs Lee's arm and they make their exit. Fast forward to that night, Yu-Jeong's anxiety returns in full force as they reach the café. She gazes up at her new home, a knot of unease in her stomach. Lee, ever the charmer, tries to lighten the mood, telling her she can use his shower anytime she wants. But before she can process that, he laughs it off, saying he was just messing with her. He then gives her a quick tour of the office, explaining her schedule for the next day, and hands her the keys to the office and the café. Once he's gone, Yu-Jeong collapses onto the couch, her mind racing with thoughts of what her life will be like for the next few weeks. Then, a horrifying realization hits her, she forgot to unpack her underwear. Talk about a wild first day. Yu-Jeong wakes up to her new reality, her heart sinking at the prospect. She rolls onto her couch, trying to find a comfortable spot when suddenly, a loud rant breaks the silence. Startled, she jumps up to find a stunning woman with shiny black hair and porcelain skin storming into the office. The woman introduces herself as Hyeji Han, the barista and manager of Delicious Blood Cafe. Without wasting time, she launches into a lecture about Yu-Jeong's tardiness and lack of competency. She's like a whirlwind, going over the rules and expectations of the cafe, while subtly threatening Yu-Jeong about the consequences of messing up. After unloading her barrage of information, Hyeji hands Yu-Jeong her work schedule, asking her how she plans to manage her time. The sheer amount of hours startles Yu-Jeong, but Hyeji explains that summer is their busiest season, with tourists flooding the cafe. Grudgingly, Yu-Jeong agrees to take Fridays off, trying to absorb the flood of instructions about running the cafe. Just as she's about to head downstairs to meet her coworkers, Hyeji halts, a look of realization crossing her face. She turns to Yu-Jeong, asking her about her trip with Mr. Lee yesterday. Caught off guard, Yu-Jeong hesitates before sharing the details of their journey. Hyeji seems pleased with her answer and finally lets her go, but not before mentioning the weekend manager, a guy. It's 9 sharp when Yu-Jeong hurries downstairs, only to be greeted by a golden-haired boy with dark eyes. As she starts introducing herself, he interrupts her, calling her the girl who ruined the painting, and bursts into laughter. His words hit her like a punch, but she manages to keep her cool, even though she's seething inside. Once he's done laughing, he introduces himself as Yunho Cho, his face split into a wide grin. His warmth gives Yu-Jeong a glimmer of hope. Maybe working at a cafe with a madman for a boss won't be so bad after all. In the next scene, we find Yu-Jeong elbow deep in whipped cream. She's at the cafe, learning the ropes from her manager, Hyeji Han. A couple of tries in, and she nails it, the perfect dollop of whipped cream. Hyeji gives her a nod of approval, and just like that, they're ready to open up for the day. No sooner does the door chime ring than a horde of tourists stream in. The sight of them is enough to make Yu-Jeong's blood run cold. It's a long and exhausting day, with wave after wave of customers demanding their attention. By the end of it, Yu-Jeong collapses onto a table, completely wiped out. As she lifts her head, she spots Lee in the corner. He's sipping on something that looks suspiciously like a blood bag. She can't help but wonder if that's how people actually drink it. Yunho Cho, ever the jokester, reassures her it's all good. She decides to let it slide, turning her attention back to Lee. He seems to be lost in his work, oblivious to the world around him. When he finally looks up and smiles, her heart does a little flip. Yunho catches her staring and teases her about falling for the boss. He warns her not to get too attached, she'll end up like Hyeji, hopelessly infatuated and getting nowhere. But all Yu-Jeong can think about is why Lee never drinks from a cup and insists on making his own drinks. Curious, she tries to get some info out of Yunho. She asks about Lee's age, but it's clear Yunho is as clueless as she is. Their conversation quickly devolves into gossip about Hyeji. Apparently, Hyeji had dreams of opening her own café but started working at Delicious Blood to gain experience. It took just one look at Lee for her to fall head over heels. But given his reserved nature, she's kept her feelings to herself. Unsatisfied with Yunho's stories, Yu-Jeong probes further. She's determined to find out more about Lee. He looks mixed race, but Yunho can't confirm. This only piques her curiosity even more. Later, she finds herself sitting next to Lee, a glass of Delicious Blood in hand. She doesn't really get the hype about it, and Lee chuckles, encouraging her to give it a try. After all, she'll be making a lot of it while working at the cafe. Intrigued, she asks him why he chose such an unusual drink as his signature beverage. Lee explains how it helps solidify his brand. Their conversation is cut short when Lee sends her to fetch his glasses from his office. As she steps into his space, she can't shake off the feeling that there's something strange about Lee. And she's determined to find out what. Yu-Jeong steps into Lee's office, the door creaking in protest. A strong whiff of bleach greets her, and she wrinkles her nose, wondering what on earth happened here. But she dismisses the thought, focusing on her mission to retrieve Lee's glasses. As she picks up the spectacles from the table, her eyes land on a burst bag of Delicious Blood, its contents splattered across the table. She grimaces at the sight, feeling a knot twist in her stomach. Regardless, she takes a deep breath, grabs the glasses, and heads back downstairs. After a hectic day filled with orders and demanding customers, she's handed the very same glasses by a customer who found them on the counter. With a sigh, she decides to return them to Lee's office for safekeeping. When she arrives, she finds Lee staring blankly at the burst beverage bag on his table. What he does next makes her gag. He dips his finger in the spilled juice and licks it off. Gross. Just as he looks up, spotting her standing there, she drops the glasses in surprise. But before she can stammer out an explanation, he scoops them up, thanking her for bringing them. Then, out of the blue, he asks her on a secret date. This whole scenario leaves Yu-Jeong feeling overwhelmed, and the tears well up in her eyes. She admits how much he frightens her, leaving Lee speechless. He tries to explain that dinner is just a welcome gesture to celebrate her new job at Delicious Blood Cafe, but Yu-Jeong pours out all her fears and concerns until Lee finally promises not to mess with her or scare her anymore. But considering how unpredictable he is, can she really trust his words? Only time will tell. Yu-Jeong is all dolled up for her date, her heart pounding in anticipation. As she steps out of the cafe, she spots Lee waiting for her. She raises an eyebrow at his nonchalance. Wasn't this supposed to be a secret rendezvous? Shrugging it off, she walks over to him and they head out to what he vaguely described as some restaurant. On arriving, Yu-Jeong can't help but gasp at the opulence of the place. Some restaurant, indeed. When their food arrives, she's taken aback by Lee's rare steak, which looks like it's barely been cooked. He simply shrugs, saying he prefers it that way. It's been his go-to for years. As they eat, they dive into deep conversations about their personal lives. Lee opens up about his past experiences, and Yu-Jeong learns he's mixed race, just as she'd guessed. Post-dinner, Lee brings up Yu-Jeong's living habits, especially her bathing routine, given his obsession with cleanliness. He suggests that she could shower at his place tonight, leaving her torn between shock and offense. Once she gathers her thoughts, she firmly tells him she's not comfortable with his proposition. Lee backs off, but not without suggesting they share a bottle of fancy wine at his place. He doesn't have anyone else to enjoy it with, after all. Yu-Jeong hesitates, 2 adults alone with a bottle of wine? But Lee assures her it's nothing more than a friendly gesture, considering their significant age gap. When she still seems unsure, he playfully threatens to make her pay for dinner. Sighing, she surrenders to his impromptu plan. Next, we find Yu-Jeong awkwardly sitting in Lee's luxurious home, while he fetches a bottle of champagne. He excuses himself to chill the bottle, recommending she take a shower in the meantime. She follows his directions upstairs and into a lavish bathroom, where she changes into an upscale robe and flip-flops. The grandeur of the place hits her, her boss is seriously loaded. After enjoying what might be the most luxurious shower of her life, she heads downstairs to ask Lee for a hairdryer. The moment she steps in, Lee's gaze lingers on her, making her blush. He leads her to his room to fetch the hairdryer, but when he offers to help, she quickly grabs it, preferring to do it herself. His eyes remain on her, making her nervous. She briskly returns the hairdryer when she's done, eager to break the tension. With the awkwardness behind them, Yu-Jeong beams as Lee pours champagne into her glass. As they toast, she accidentally clinks her glass too hard, shattering it. She rushes to apologize for her clumsiness, but learning the cost of the broken glass only worsens her embarrassment. She tries to clean up, but ends up pricking her finger on a shard. Lee reaches out to help, and in a surprising move, he puts her bleeding finger in his mouth. Yu-Jeong is left speechless, wondering just how many more surprises the night holds. Our protagonist reels from the unexpected intimacy, her heart pounding in her chest. As Lee releases her finger from his lips, he mumbles an apology, claiming he was simply trying to stop the bleeding. Overwhelmed by the bizarre turn of events, Yu-Jeong quickly changes back into her dress, grabs her handbag, and storms off, leaving Lee alone with his high-end champagne. She berates herself for not pushing him away when she had the chance. Instead, she had stood there, frozen like a deer in headlights. After composing herself, she decides to distract herself with some laundry, specifically anything that isn't related to Mr. Lee. Later that night, as she tucks herself into bed, she inspects the cut on her finger. It's not as bad as she imagined. She shrugs it off, choosing sleep over contemplation. The next morning, Yu-Jeong wakes up to find Lee already at work, invading her personal space. Irritated, she confronts him, but his nonchalant response about starting work early only irks her more. After a brief argument, Lee instructs her to get ready for work. As the boss, he gets the final say, and she grudgingly complies. Once she's downstairs, she finds Lee at his usual spot. She commends his early start and inquires about his reason. His cheeky response about keeping an eye on her so she doesn't break anything else fails to amuse her. She retorts, asking him to have a little faith in her abilities. The next few minutes are spent with Yu-Jeong whipping up an orange Fantasia while peppering Lee with questions. She's curious about his eating habits and why he always insists on making his own drinks. Lee casually answers her queries, stating that his employees don't owe him anything and he prefers to eat alone. Caught up in their conversation, Yu-Jeong accidentally nicks her finger with a knife. Lee rushes over, repeating his first aid technique of sucking on the wound. Despite the discomfort, she doesn't push him away, only complaining about the pain. She curtly asks him to respect her boundaries and returns to work. Later, while serving an iced latte, she knocks her injured finger, causing a sharp pain. Lee swoops in, handing her a bag containing a band-aid. Flustered by the attention, she ducks down, hiding her face in embarrassment. After work, Lee pops up again, asking about her dinner plans and suggesting they finally finish the wine. She tries to decline, but before she knows it, she's back at his place, sipping on a glass of vintage 1982 wine. However, just when things seem to be going smoothly, Lee drops another enigmatic comment about his age, wrapping Yu-Jeong in his web of mysteries once more. Yu-Jeong is doing some quick math in her head. If Lee was born before the wine they're drinking, he'd be over 30, right? But Lee, with a smirk, repeats his outrageous claim, he's well over 2 centuries old. As she sips her wine and nibbles on cheese, she notices Lee hasn't touched any of the cheese. She offers him some, but he declines. His gaze, intense and burning, makes her a little uneasy. Oblivious to his growing intensity, Yu-Jeong offers to run to the store for some snacks he might prefer. But Lee insists she stay put, not wanting her to go to any trouble. The atmosphere shifts, his touch, his lingering looks are making her anxious. She needs to leave. But as she makes her move to exit, Lee effectively blocks her path. His arms stretch out, pressing against the wall, trapping her in. He locks eyes with her, asking her out again. Thrown off balance by his persistence, she falls back on her usual defense, questioning. When she challenges him about his age, he sticks to his improbable story. Changing tactics, she asks what she should call him now that things seem less professional. He suggests Daniel Lee, or Dan for short. As she repeats his name, he moves closer, his face nearing her neck. His breath feels warm, his demeanor predatory. Enough is enough. She shoves him away and bolts, fleeing from the uncharted territory. She's never even had her first kiss, let alone a date, and this is all too much, too fast. Her mind races with regret over ever meeting Lee, wishing instead she'd stuck with cram school and the predictability it offered. She stops to catch her breath, and even then, thoughts of Lee invade her mind. Meanwhile, back at his lavish home, Lee is wrestling with unfamiliar feelings. The unexpected desire that Yu-Jeong ignites in him is alien to his centuries-old existence as a vampire. Yes, you read that right, a vampire. For the longest time, he'd been resigned to his immortal existence, even attempting to end it with an executioner's sword, the only weapon capable of killing a vampire. But meeting Yu-Jeong has stirred something within him. Maybe it was the first time he caught her scent, or when he saw someone touch her in a way he didn't like. Or perhaps it's her unique immunity to his hypnosis. Whatever it is, he knows he wants her, and things are about to get complicated. The next morning, back at the café, it's business as usual. Yu-Jeong is behind the counter, and Lee is engrossed in his laptop. As she tidies up, her gaze lingers on him, the events of last night still fresh in her mind. When Lee places an order for delicious blood, Yu-Jeong, being the only staff on duty, has no choice but to serve him. Yu-Jeong slides a glass of juice across the table to Lee, already turning away to return to her work. However, he stops her, deciding to strike up a chat about how he's noticed she skips breakfast. Yu-Jeong's face falls, she was expecting praise for her juicing skills. Not missing a beat, Lee praises her juice-making prowess. But before he can take a sip, Yu-Jeong grabs his glass and downs it in one go. Lee watches, amused, as she finishes the drink, a droplet lingering on her lip. He reaches out to wipe it off, but she swats his hand away, reminding him of her personal boundaries. Lee apologizes right away, his attention shifting back to their pending date. He's desperate to keep her around, not just because of his growing feelings for her, but also to figure out why she's immune to his hypnosis. Is she a witch? That's a question for another day. Lee keeps pushing for the date, despite his usual reluctance to do so. Yu-Jeong fires off a few questions, verifying the rumors about him. She then voices her concerns about dating him, highlighting the steps he's skipped to get to this point. She points out that if they start dating, it'll be long distance since she's only working for him for a month. To appease her, Lee promises to open another branch in Seoul, closer to her school. Yu-Jeong laughs it off, leaving Lee to bask in her beauty. Soon enough, Yu-Jeong finds herself at Lee's place again, comfortably lounging on his bed and chatting like old friends. She even gets him to show her photos from his college days. The vintage look of the pictures raises questions, but Lee skillfully changes the subject. They decide to grab dinner. opting for a less expensive place. But Lee, predictably, takes her to the same upscale restaurant they'd been to before. They dine, exchanging sweet glances and whispers over the chef's special. Later that night, Yu-Jeong checks her test results, her heart sinking as she sees a D staring back at her. Fear grips her. Did her group even submit their report? Now, her scholarship is at risk. Overwhelmed, she falls onto her couch and cries herself to sleep. Despite the previous night's distress, Yu-Jeong is strangely cheerful. The next morning, she's rocking out to some tunes while doing the dishes when she hears her name. Turning around, she's surprised to find her seniors from school. After exchanging greetings, they dive into a conversation about grades. It quickly becomes clear they're here to blame their failure on her. Seems like they had nothing better to do than trek all the way from Seoul, just to sling a bit of nonsense her way. Yu-Jeong, not one to back down easily, starts firing off fact after fact, proving that she's not in the same boat as them. But, they're quick to take offense. Just as they're gearing up for a verbal takedown, Hye-ji-han makes a surprise appearance, instantly stealing their thunder with her stunning looks. Next thing you know, they're all chillin' at a table, sipping on delicious blood, acting like they weren't just about to jump down her throat. As Yu-Jeong tries to make her exit, they reel her back in, still eager to chat. It's almost like watching a comedy sketch of good cop bad cop. One is throwing threats her way while the other is practically begging for help. Their grand plan? They want Yu-Jeong to email the professor, claiming she didn't complete her report. But before they can even finish their sentence, Yu-Jeong cuts them off with a firm no. When she attempts to walk away, they play their trump card, blackmail. In the past, Yu-Jeong reported a guy named Taeho Park for stalking her, which led to him spending a day in jail. Now, they're threatening to spill the beans to the school major and twist the story to make her look bad unless she helps them out. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Yu-Jeong is left speechless. These guys came all the way from Seoul just to make a fool out of her, and worst of all, it's working. Just when things are looking bleak, the cafe door swings open and in walks Lee, ready to save the day. After rescuing Yu-Jeong from her predicament, Lee wants to know who those guys were. Yu-Jeong, trying to downplay the situation, tells him they were just some schoolmates asking a favor. But Lee isn't buying it, so he decides to dig deeper. Before he can get any answers, one of the guys lunges at Yu-Jeong, only to be stopped in his tracks by Lee's command. The second guy tries his luck, but is shut down just as quickly. Lee then hypnotizes them to never speak ill of Yu-Jeong or touch her when she goes back to school, and to pass the message on to their buddy Taeho Park. Yu-Jeong watches wide-eyed as the boys bow in submission. She's left wondering if Lee's actions are all for show or if they'll actually work. Later on, Lee pulls Yu-Jeong aside for a private chat. Meanwhile, Hye-ji-han watches from afar, green with envy. In his office, Lee maintains a distance from Yu-Jeong, giving her the impression he's mad at her. He beckons her over, places his hands on her cheeks, and starts complaining about how her formal address earlier made him feel. Yu-Jeong's cheeks turn a rosy hue at Lee's adorable antics. She explains that she was just trying to maintain a professional front, especially since their colleagues and the manager were within earshot. Lee, content with her explanation, shrugs it off and dives straight into the topic of Taeho Park. Yu-Jeong, however, is not too keen on digging up old memories. After a bit of nudging from Lee, she reluctantly begins to share her side of the story. Back when school was still in session, Taeho Park had confessed his feelings for her in the most romantic way possible. Despite his grand gesture, she turned him down, oblivious to the repercussions of rejecting a man who wasn't good at handling rejection. One night, she discovered he'd been stalking her, armed and dangerous. Luckily, she managed to alert the police in time before anything bad happened. Lee, trying to offer some comfort, wraps his arms around her and whispers soothing words. Yu-Jeong gets emotional, having not experienced such warmth and comfort in a long while. It's a welcome change, but she soon has to return to work. Back downstairs, the workload is piling up. Hye-ji-han tasks Yu-Jeong with whipping up a new batch of cream, and soon after, the manager asks her to place a supply order. As she's juggling all these tasks, Yoon Ho-cho walks in and inquires about her meeting with Lee. That's when it all clicks for Yu-Jeong. Yunho Cho reveals that Hye Ji-han had walked in on them in Lee's office when she went to look for him. From her tear-streaked face, it's evident something upset her. Yu-Jeong feigns ignorance, not willing to disclose any details about her private conversation with Lee. Hye Ji-han then makes a dramatic entrance, announcing that she's received a bonus from Lee. Yu-Jeong and Yunho Cho are left dumbfounded as Hye Ji-han struts away, leaving them in her wake. The next morning, Yu-Jeong is jolted awake by a notification on her phone. It's news about Taeho Park. He's had an accident and won't be able to attend classes for a semester due to his injuries. This means Yu-Jeong won't have to face him when she resumes school. Thrilled with the turn of events, she can't wait to share the good news with Lee. As if on cue, Lee walks into the shop, looking dapper in a white suit. Yu-Jeong rushes to greet him, complimenting his outfit and eagerly sharing the news about Taeho Park. But before she can even finish her sentence, Lee pulls her into a tight embrace. Startled and scared, Yu-Jeong tries to wriggle free, but Lee's grip is too strong. As she struggles, she notices something off about Lee. There's two of him. Yu-Jeong finds herself caught between two Lees, one she's been trying to avoid, and another who's just shown up. The Lee she knows swoops in to rescue her from the other Lee, ordering him to keep his hands to himself. As he does, she catches his name Alex. Alex greets Lee with a wide grin, while Lee doesn't seem too thrilled to see his twin brother. They start catching up, with Alex doing most of the talking and Lee looking uninterested. Alex seems genuinely happy to see his brother and is surprised too, as he thought Lee was on the verge of giving up on life. Yet here he is, in a swanky cafe with an attractive woman by his side. Yu-Jeong, who's mostly been silent, finally speaks up to demand an apology. True to his cheeky personality, Alex immediately gets down on one knee and apologizes for his antics. His elder brother follows suit before pulling Alex outside for a stern talking to. While the brothers are out, Yu-Jeong returns to her spot. But it's not long before Lee comes back in and ushers her aside. He tells her they need to find a way for her to tell him and Alex apart to prevent such pranks in the future. But as he's about to continue, he spots Yunho Cho eavesdropping on their conversation. He abruptly stops talking and heads back to his office. Once he's gone, Yunho picks up where they left off, pestering Yu-Jeong about her relationship with their boss. Despite his efforts, she doesn't give him the answers he's looking for. Yu-Jeong can't seem to shake off Yunho Cho, no matter how hard she tries. That is until Lee steps in and whisks her away for dinner, answering Yunho Cho's questions without saying a word. Initially, Lee suggests they dine at their usual spot, but Yu-Jeong objects due to the high prices. So, they end up at his place instead. At home, Lee shares stories about the crazy times he and Alex had growing up. Their striking resemblance often led to confusion and chaos. In the middle of their conversation, Lee apologizes again for Alex's behavior earlier. As they chat and sip wine, the doorbell rings, sending Yu-Jeong's heart racing. It's Alex, her worst nightmare. Seeing her worry, Lee comes up with a plan. He pulls her into a tight hug, causing her lipstick to stain his white shirt. He then goes to open the door to Alex, who rushes in with a large bouquet. He presents the flowers to Yu-Jeong as an apology for his earlier actions, which seems unnecessary considering he could have apologized without the extravagant gesture. Still, Yu-Jeong accepts his apology and the flowers. Once that's settled, Alex pulls his brother aside for a serious chat over a bottle of champagne. As Yu-Jeong listens in on their conversation, she realizes the man standing in front of her is the infamous Alex Lee and she can't believe it. As he moves closer and starts flirting with her, Lee steps in to prevent things from escalating. Finding his brother's place a bit too crowded for his liking, Alex decides to make a swift exit. Once the door shuts behind him, Yu-Jeong turns to Lee, her curiosity piqued about his enigmatic twin. But her probing questions seem to stir a hint of jealousy in Lee. Not one to mask his feelings, he confesses that he's not entirely comfortable with her showing such interest in Alex. Yu-Jeong quickly reassures him that it's nothing more than innocent curiosity. She points out the obvious, they're brothers, after all. Why would she want anything more with Alex? Having cleared the air, she glances at the clock and realizes it's getting late. She makes a move to leave, but Lee stops her. He expresses concern over her spending the night alone at the café and proposes she stays over instead. Taken aback, Yu-Jeong initially declines, feeling things might be progressing too quickly. But after some gentle persuasion, she agrees, comforted by the promise of having an entire floor to herself. As they head upstairs, Yu-Jeong settles on the bed, her awkward posture revealing her discomfort. She mentally kicks herself for not bringing her pajamas, and frets over Lee potentially noticing the scar on her calf. Sensing her unease, Lee offers to fetch her a fresh set of PJs. Once he returns, Yu-Jeong invites him to sit and chat before they call it a night. She's curious about what prompted him to ask her out. His response leaves her blushing. He confesses he was drawn to her unique scent and her knack for finding trouble. And the final reason? He wants to kiss her. With her consent, he leans in and plants a soft kiss on her lips, creating a moment she'll remember forever. A fleeting thought of Alex's attempted kiss earlier intrudes her mind, but she quickly shakes it off, not wanting to taint the memory of her first kiss with Lee. The following morning, Yu-Jeong wakes up well rested and takes a moment to enjoy the delicious smell wafting up from the kitchen. The scent immediately brings back memories of last night, causing her to jump out of bed and head downstairs. She's greeted by the tantalizing aroma of breakfast and the sight of Lee's beaming smile. He treats her like a guest at a 5-star restaurant, setting the table for her and presenting a nutritious breakfast he's prepared just for her. As she digs in, Lee simply watches her eat, his eyes filled with contentment. Yu-Jeong strides into work, her attire reflecting her vibrant mood. She's greeted by Hye-ji-han and Yun-ho Cho, who are already at their stations. When they question her about her whereabouts, she brushes it off with a playful fib about a bathroom break. Without warning, Alex bursts into the shop in his typical dramatic fashion. He breezes up to the counter, asking for his brother, much to everyone's surprise. Hye-ji-han, who has a soft spot for Lee, is taken aback and intrigued by this doppelganger. Using his charm, Alex convinces her to show him to Lee's office, for some privacy. Anticipating trouble, Yu-Jeong dials Lee's number, quickly briefing him on the situation. Upon his arrival, she points him to the potential disaster brewing in his office. Moments later, both Alex and Lee emerge from the office, with a somewhat pale Hye-ji-han in tow. Lee, concerned, advises her to take the rest of the day off. As Yu-Jeong observes the unfolding scene, she notices a familiar purple scarf tied around Hye-ji-han's neck, the very one Lee had used on her earlier that morning. Before she can question Lee about it, he's already out the door with his brother. Putting her curiosity aside, Yu-Jeong shifts her focus to helping Hye-ji-han get home safely. As they leave the cafe, she points out the scarf and asks Hye-ji-han about its origin. To her surprise, Hye-ji-han is oblivious to the scarf and its presence. When she removes it, a lipstick mark is revealed. Despite the evidence, Hye-ji-han is clueless about what transpired in the office, let alone how the scarf wound up around her neck. Meanwhile, Yu-Jeong is battling a whirlwind of emotions, but maintains her composure. The disappointment of opening up to someone only to be met with deceit stings. Once Hye-ji-han departs, Yu-Jeong informs Yun-ho Cho she needs some fresh air. Stepping outside, Yu-Jeong decides to wander through a nearby park until dusk begins to settle. Contemplating whether to return to the cafe or not, she's interrupted by Yun-ho Cho, huffing and puffing as he calls out her name. He tells her everyone has been worried sick and that Lee even closed the shop early to look for her. While this piques her interest, what really catches her attention is when Yun-ho Cho mentions the scarf. She blushes, realizing her secret is out. Yun-ho Cho tries to comfort her, assuring her that she holds a special place in Lee's heart. His treatment of her is unlike anyone else's. Yu-Jeong dismisses his words due to his typically laid-back demeanor. However, Yun-ho Cho surprises her after spending a few minutes together. Yun-ho Cho manages to get Yu-Jeong to open up, showing her that there's more beneath the surface than she realizes. As they chat about Lee and their past, he gently nudges her to reconsider her stance on their relationship and work through their misunderstandings. The conversation turns into a therapy session for Yu-Jeong. She finds herself pouring out her heart about her journey with Lee, from the origin of their relationship to the current turbulence. She even mentions Lee's peculiar comment about her scent and, in an attempt to prove how odd it is, asks Yunho-cho if he can smell anything. After a moment's hesitation, he confirms that he doesn't detect any particular scent. Yu-Jeong, who rarely wears makeup or perfume, is left perplexed by Lee's mysterious scent claim. But the oddities don't stop there. She shares with Yunho-cho the incident where Lee attempted to bite her neck. Every time she brings up Lee's strange behavior, Yunho-cho downplays it with a lighthearted excuse. This time, he suggests Lee might be struggling to express his feelings, hence the awkward attempts at affection. His explanation seems reasonable, prompting Yu-Jeong to return to the café with him. As she accepts Yunho-cho's outstretched hand, preparing to leave, Lee suddenly appears, looking relieved but visibly exhausted. Yunho-cho takes the hint and departs swiftly, leaving the pair alone. Once Yunho-cho is out of sight, Lee showers Yu-Jeong with concern, making her feel like a lost child found safe and sound. In her emotional state, she spills everything, waiting eagerly for his response. Before explaining, Lee pulls her into a comforting hug. He then clarifies what happened at the office, a romantic encounter between Alex and Hye-ji-han, and his attempt to cover up the evidence. Both apologize and make up, restoring their relationship to its normal state. They end the day at their favorite restaurant, where Yu-Jeong seizes the moment to confess her feelings for Lee. She starts off slowly, gradually building up to her heartfelt confession. However, instead of responding, Lee comments on the steak they're eating, leaving Yu-Jeong internally fuming. Despite her frustration, she maintains her calm exterior, vowing never to put herself in such a vulnerable position again. After dinner, they return to Lee's house, where she takes a shower. Emerging from the bathroom, she finds Lee waiting to help dry her hair. Not wanting to fall for his sweet gesture after his dismissal at dinner, she insists on drying her hair herself. Suddenly, she gets a craving for ice cream. Even though she's upset with him, she asks if they can go get some. At this point, it's hard to tell who's sending more mixed signals. Lee's eyes are glued to Yu-Jeong, he can't seem to look away. Then, in his typical manner of sidestepping issues, he proposes they experiment with pet names to strengthen their bond. Yu-Jeong initially wants to protest, but Lee entices her with a promise: if she calls him by a pet name, he'll buy her any ice cream she wants. Before long, she's shouting "babe" at the top of her lungs with such adorable fervor that Lee can't resist. Later, as they stroll down the street, Yu-Jeong savors her chosen ice cream and they engage in deep conversation. They chat about Lee's academic background and his younger brother's achievements. As they talk, Yu-Jeong realizes that Lee is in a league of his own. Feeling insecure, she questions why he's dating her, considering they're so different. He comes from a distinguished family, while she's just a student. But Lee reassures her, telling her she's doing incredibly well for her age and there's no need to worry. Then, he takes a leap and confesses that she's the most wonderful woman he's ever met. His heartfelt admission is everything she's yearned to hear. With confirmation that their feelings are mutual, they head back home, arm in arm. The following day, the cafe buzzes with activity. Hye-ji-han is tidying up when she spots a crowd of media personnel outside. She asks Lee about it, but he's just as puzzled. Their question is answered when Alex enters the scene. Everyone in the cafe groans in embarrassment, and Lee sighs, knowing his peaceful morning is about to be disrupted. Outside, Alex attempts to grab his brother's attention but fails. He then resumes his interview, sharing his family history and how proud his father would be of their accomplishments. He also drops a few tidbits about Lee, revealing that he's the director of a top champagne company and is only visiting Korea. Yu-Jeong is taken aback by these revelations, hurt that she's learning about them this way. As Alex brags about their family wealth, Lee steps in, declining the reporter's request for an interview and asking them not to mention his business in their article. They respect his wishes and leave. With the cafe now quiet, Alex approaches Yu-Jeong for feedback on his interview. She gives him a hard time, just like their first encounter. Undeterred, Alex proposes a movie date that night, suggesting Lee could tag along. But Yu-Jeong swiftly turns down his audacious invitation, reminding him of his upcoming trip back to the States. Alex throws a curveball. If Yu-Jeong agrees to a movie night with him, he'll pack his bags and jet off to Korea tonight. Given the chaos he's been stirring up since his arrival, this seems like a risky wager for Yu-Jeong. She eyes Lee, hoping he'd step in. But plot twist, instead of playing her knight in shining armor, he sides with his brother, agreeing to the movie night on her behalf. She's officially in a pickle. As fate would have it, she finds herself sandwiched between the brothers at the movies. The film? A love story between a human girl and a vampire. Talk about clichés. But as it unfolds, the narrative starts to resonate with her own relationship with Lee, the protective vampire, and the innocent human girl. It gives her pause, but she shakes it off and dives back into the movie. Just as she's getting invested in the plot, Alex starts whispering comments that are hard to decipher. He even asks Lee about the feasibility of growing fangs, like the ones on screen. Really, Alex? She almost rolls her eyes, but curiosity gets the better of her, and she asks him about his thoughts on vampires. Lee watches this exchange silently, waiting for the right moment to intervene. The conversation turns into a mini debate about the existence of vampires. Alex is relentless in his attempts to convince her, leaning in closer and whispering more outrageous theories. She's so engrossed in his tales that she doesn't notice the elongated canines peeking out from his mouth. Sensing the change in his brother's voice and the threat it carries, Lee steps in. He halts Alex's theatrics before they escalate into a full-blown horror show. In a low, gravelly voice that sends chills down Yu-Jeong's spine, Lee addresses Alex. He suggests they stick to their 10-year reunion tradition, given the havoc Alex's sudden appearance has caused. Alex accepts the criticism but warns Lee about potential backlash from their clan due to his illicit relationship with a human. With a final farewell to a baffled Yu-Jeong, he leaves. Now that they're alone, Lee lightens the mood with chilled champagne and apologizes for Alex's peculiar behavior. But Yu-Jeong's mind is elsewhere. She's more concerned about the duration of Lee's stay in Korea, and how long he plans on being in her life. Lee assures her he's not going anywhere anytime soon, easing her worries. As the day fades into night, they retire upstairs. With Alex out of the picture, life resumes as usual. One afternoon, Yu-Jeong stumbles upon a collection of Lee's accolades while exploring his home. Among the memorabilia, she finds an old diploma dated back to 1926. Confused, she asks him about it. Lee explains that the certificate belonged to his great-grandfather, who was a doctor in Heidelberg. Yu-Jeong's eyes widen at the revelation. His family tree wasn't just a shrub, it was a veritable forest. But she still felt like she was missing pieces of the puzzle. She nudges him to dish out more about his day-to-day life. Lee confesses how work engulfs his time, leaving little room for simple pleasures like catching a movie. Suddenly, Yu-Jeong understands his early bedtimes and chuckles at the thought of him playing the overprotective parent. Seizing the moment, Lee proposes they shake things up that night and asks for her input on fun nighttime activities. Yu-Jeong racks her brain but draws a blank. Lee, sensing her struggle, suggests a game of rummikub. The idea of matching numbered tiles piques her interest, and the deal is sealed with a playful wager: the loser has to fulfill 2 wishes of the winner. As they dive into the game, Yu-Jeong soon finds herself celebrating her victory, not once, but twice. Unbeknownst to her, Lee had let her win both rounds, ready to fulfill her whims. Her first wish? If Lee was serious about opening a delicious blood branch in Seoul, she wanted it in Sinchon. Lee nods in agreement, making her cheer with delight. 1 down, 1 more to go. Her second wish, however, catches him off guard. She wants him to kiss her. The request sends a wave of excitement and apprehension through him. Trying to keep his composure, he pulls her close and plants a gentle kiss on her lips, fighting the urge to let his fangs out, but the tension within him proves too strong. Yu-Jeong flinches from the kiss, pulling away in pain. Her lips are bruised, and a trickle of blood seeps out. She's shocked. Kisses shouldn't hurt like this. She chides Lee for being so rough, waiting for an apology. But what he says next leaves her stunned. I can't control myself, he confesses, I want you so badly, but I'm dangerous. You shouldn't trust me. The words hit her like a ton of bricks. She's never seen this side of him before. Lee, on the other hand, feels like he's staring at a ticking time bomb. He knows he's bound to hurt her with his uncontrollable desire for her. If only the hypnosis worked on her, he would have cleared her memory of this hurt and left everything as they were. Now, he has to face the reality and let her go. Lee musters up the courage and tells her the grim truth: it's over. Yu-Jeong, already bruised from his previous confession, now feels like she's been shattered into a million pieces. Despite her heartbroken state, Lee pushes on, explaining that he must keep his distance. He fears what he might do if he stays around her any longer. He even suggests she should feel the same animosity towards him as she does towards Alex. But Yu-Jeong's not ready to throw in the towel just yet. She argues back, insisting she can never despise him like she does his brother. But Lee's unyielding. He wants her to leave and never come back. Yu-Jeong, however, is desperate for something more concrete, a reason that would give her closure. And Lee delivers. He reveals his fangs to her, showing her his true identity. Yu-Jeong reels back in shock, stumbles onto the bed, trying to process the horrifying revelation, but Lee doesn't give her a moment to recover. He urges her to get out, and this time, she complies. She bolts out of his house, the door slamming shut behind her. In a daze, she finds herself back at the café, specifically in Lee's office. She remembers he stashes his delicious blood bags there. She opens the fridge, and there they are. She punctures one and tastes the liquid. It's not juice, it's blood. In that instant, everything comes crashing down. She collapses on the floor, gasping for breath. Gathering her remaining strength, she leaves the cafe and hails a cab to the train station. Back in Seoul, Yu-Jeong's life feels like a never-ending nightmare. She longs for the days of bliss she once shared with Lee. But those days are gone. Now, her life is consumed by research on vampires, trying to make sense of her whirlwind romance with Lee. Her daily routine consists of studying, weeping, and then some more studying. She obsessively follows Lee's life, his cafe, their shared memories, his real identity. Even when she tries to escape into the world of romance novels, she can't shake off the memories of him. Their last encounter was terrifying, yet she can't help but miss him. It's a cruel paradox she can't seem to escape. Over in another corner of Korea, Lee's caught up in a whirlwind of emotions. He craves solitude, needing space to sort through his feelings. Just when he's grappling with his inner turmoil, in walks Hye-ji-han. The first words out of her mouth? Yu-Jeong's name, the one person he's trying so hard to erase from his memory. As she approaches him, she spots the juice spill on the floor and moves to clean it up, but Lee halts her before she can get started. He steps back, creating a small distance between them. Then, using his vampire compulsion, he instructs her to wipe all memories of Yu-Jeong. In an instant, it's as if Yu-Jeong never existed in Hye-ji-han's world. With Yu-Jeong out of the picture, Lee buries himself in work. His laptop becomes his constant companion, his fingers a blur on the keyboard. Seated by his favorite spot near the window, he barely notices the outside world anymore. During one such work frenzy, Hye-ji-han points out a job applicant who's just walked in. Not in the mood for socializing, Lee leaves the interviewing to Hye-ji-han. After a brief chat, the manager of Delicious Blood decides to hire the young woman on the spot. As the new hire approaches Lee for a casual chat, he's not in the least bit interested. So, he pulls his usual trick: he hypnotizes her to lose interest in his affairs. Her eyes dim instantly, and like a well-trained pup, she nods in agreement, leaving Lee in peace to continue his work. It's obvious these two are clearly meant for each other. How do you think the story's going to unfold? Comment Yu-Jeong if you want a part 2. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.